Hey everyone, Dan here, and welcome back. We're going to do part 2 of the Becoming a Writer series. I think that's what I called it. I have the memory of a goldfish. And welcome back. Just kidding. Anyway, we're going to talk about one of the oddest questions I get a lot about writing is where do you get your ideas? And I say that's one of the oddest questions because I don't know if there's a real good answer for that. I can give you some ideas, or I can give you some of my thoughts on how I can find focus to come up with ideas, but they vary from, where an idea is born. It's random. It's a crapshoot. I mean, I have been sitting watching television and saw a character on TV that just clicked something in my brain, and my mind starts writing a story based on that image I saw, and it has nothing to do with what's actually going on the TV. But something in that image makes me think of, what I want, of a story. There's a famous video, November Rain by Guns N' Roses. There's a scene with Axl Rose standing in the rain as by his wife's funeral gravesite. The look he had with just the pouring down rain, the wet hair, the whole thing, in my mind triggered a character idea that I added to probably the first comic I ever put out. No, not the first comic, but the first real series I put out called Bloodlust. And, that created a character that kind of tied a lot of things together that had been missing. So watching that video sparked an idea, or it's like, finding a loose thread on a sweater and you start pulling it to see where it goes. And and you end up destroying a lot of sweaters, but sometimes you get that idea, you follow that thread and see where it goes. So I've had those moments. Other times, when you have a deadline, they're horrible. Deadlines are just very scary items because they come at you like a freight train, and they're like objects in the rearview mirror. They are much closer than you think they are. Recently I've been trying to come up with ideas for a company that's asked me to pitch some feature ideas. And they're looking for certain things, and what they asked me to do was come up with log lines. And if you don't know what a log line is, it's basically a 1 or 2 sentence pitch for a movie. So when I need to come up with these ideas, I know the basic formula, the structure, so I'll get myself out of my normal environment. I will leave the house. I will go up to Starbucks or go over to Denny's or whatever, get an iced tea, sit down with my iPad. I have a keyboard attached to my iPad, and just start letting my mind wander. And I'll look around. I'll look at the people around me, the pictures on the wall, the cars driving by, and see if something clicks. The other day I was at the this was a few weeks ago now. I was at a Starbucks and I saw somebody looking at a dating app on their computer at Starbucks, and I went, a dating app, and I ended up using the dating app as part of an idea, and that's the little thread I pulled. Other things I've done is I was coming up with, early on in my career, I had an opportunity to pitch to Metal Hurlant. Metal Hurlant being the French version of Heavy Metal Magazine. There's a whole backstory there that Metal Hurlant was then licensed in the States by National Lampoon, and they called it Heavy Metal Magazine. And then eventually Metal Hurlant on their own came over as well. But Metal Hurlant was making a new push to be in the States, and a good friend of mine named Paul was the assistant editor and then eventually the managing editor at Humanoids at the time. And he asked me to pitch ideas to him. And a friend of mine suggested, well, they want these kind of O. Henry stories with little twists, so why don't you just combine genres? Take 2 genres and see what you can merge together. So I probably pitched 20 different ideas to them, and 2 of them ended up being bought. Thankfully, one of them ended up being picked up for the Metal Hurlant TV series, Metal Hurlant Chronicles, and I ended up getting to write the screenplay for the TV show, which allowed me to write for Michelle Ryan and James Marsters. And I even got to meet James Marsters later on, which was awesome. But that's completely off topic. Anyway, the idea being that I took an exercise like combining 2 genres, and that's where the ideas came from. Other things, The Freeze, the book I put out last year, that was based on a gentleman I saw at my office when I was still a computer programmer, sitting so insanely still that I thought he was frozen, that he just wasn't moving anymore. And that just started running around in my brain. So the idea of where do ideas come from, there is a spark that pops up, and sometimes it's necessity. Sometimes you got Lucius Fogg. My Lucius Fogg character came from publisher Jade Dodge was going to do chapter releases, digital chapter release books. So I would write a small 10 chapter story, releasing 1 a week. And I ended up doing a short novella of Lucius Fogg, but it was that necessity, is that she wanted to do this and asked me to participate, and I came up with Lucius Fogg for that project. So necessity is part of it. You sit down, you clear your mind, and you see what sparks, and then you just pull on that thread and pull on it until either you find something or you have an empty sweater and you move on to the next thread. There are many times that you pull the thread and it falls apart. A lot of times. And other times you come up with an idea and it's great, but it totally doesn't work for what you're doing. So you put it in your file and you move on. And then eventually somebody comes along and goes, "Hey, I'm doing an anthology. Can you put a short story in?" And you go back to that file and you're like, "Vampire Sheriff in the Old West? Okay, how about a military squad made up of werewolves?" Okay. Both of those were ideas that I originally pitched to Humanoids for Metal Hurlant that I eventually used in other properties. So where the idea thing, you have to open your mind. You have to find the spark. Once you get it, then you got to explore it. You got to take the time and really beat the crap out of the idea. The Freeze is at least 10, 15 years old. I came up with the idea. Well, I haven't been a programmer since 2006. The guy I worked with, I think, left there in 2002 or 2003. So it was an 17, 18-year-old property. I had pitched it to Humanoids at one point as a graphic novel series. I had pitched it to Christian Bernick and Amit Zappa when they were doing books. I think they were called Kingdom Comics over at Disney. And every once in a while I would pull it back out. And then Matt Hawkins asked me to pitch stuff for Top Cow, and I put a few ideas together and I threw The Freeze in there because I had it in the file. And it clicked for him. It was something he wanted to see, and there you go. Other projects will sit around. Some will just take off like a fire, It's just the perfect thing at the right time. You can't tell, but yeah, the key to finding an idea is opening your mind and just kind of waiting for this. Observe life. See what's around you, and that's where your imagination comes in. Once you get that spark, then beat the hell out of the idea and make it solid and make it strong, make it worth going. I just watched a bunch of interview days with Jim Butcher because they announced not only Peace. I'm a Dresden File fan. Now, there's a lot of similarities between Dresden and Lucius Fogg in tone. The difference is that I actually wrote the first 2 Lucius Fogg novels before I ever read Dresden Files. once I started reading Dresden Files, I became a big fan, and I listened to them with James Marsters doing the audiobooks. So when they announced that Peace Talks was coming out in July, but that there would be immediately followed in September with a second novel called Battleground, I got very excited, and I watched a bunch of interviews with him from recent, and he talks about his writing process. And you'll find that a lot of writers have similar and different processes, which is totally an unhelpful statement. But you'll find there's a lot of similarities in how people do things. But there's also people who will be meticulous, and he wrote out a 20 novel outline after writing the first 3 chapters of Stormfront. I write 10 chapters, and then I write the book, and then I write the next 10 chapters, or whatever it is. So we work very differently, but how we build a world seems to be very similar. So the key is you got to find what works for you. But getting the idea, it's nurturing it. It's, like I said, finding that spark of an idea, whether it's an image you see on a music video or on a TV screen. It's a phrase you hear. It's a moment in your life that you fixate on, and then you just run with it. So that's basically the ideas. But actually saying, well, this is how I come up with my ideas, I don't think anybody can answer that question, because they're not, ideas aren't crafted. They're discovered. Like a diamond. You dig and dig and dig and dig, and then suddenly you find the diamond, and you have to clean it up, and then you have to shape it and polish it and cut it and all that stuff. And it becomes valuable once you're done with it. Just, but there's no metal detector for diamonds. There's no easy way to find a diamond. So that's probably the best analogy I could come up with. Is it's like a diamond. You've got to dig until you find it, and then once you do, there's a lot. That's where the work starts. So if you're, you'll find a lot of people out there that says, I have an idea for a story, and then they'll try to offer it to you to write, and always say no unless they're standing there with a big wad of cash. Because if they're there with a big wad of cash, take it. But normally if they just go, I have an idea, do you want it? And you go, no. Because you're going to have your own ideas, and those are the ones you're going to put the most time in and the most effort. So find the spark, then do the work. The problem with the people who have the ideas and say, they're not willing to do the work. They're not willing to polish and cut and clean and all that stuff. That's when you become a writer. That's when you become a professional, is when you take that spark and you turn it into a diamond. That's all for tonight. I'll be back with another thing in a day or two. I hope you're enjoying these. If you are, please hit the like button or subscribe so you can see these when they come out. Hey everybody at Constellation Con. I'm having a lot of fun with that. So whoever came up with that idea is brilliant, and you guys are all great. I'm so happy to be part of that and just sharing with you guys, and the response you guys have been having is great. So thank you. And also, again, if you're looking for stuff to read, remember your local comic shops are open and they need you right now. So like if you're looking at this book, The Freeze, you can get it on Amazon. You could probably get it on eBay, or you could call your local comic shop, see if they have a copy, and they'll either send it to you, deliver it to you, or you could curbside pickup. And that's what's needed right now, is remember your local comic shops, because if we don't remember them now, they won't be there when all this is done. So everybody be safe. Love you all. Have a good night.